everybody, welcome to Improv FAQ at Length. This is a series of longer conversations about improv topics that have lots of questions surrounding them. I'm James Quesada.
And I'm Bob Wick.
And we have our very good friend joining us, Heather Sejnow.
Yay! Don't pronounce that J.
Hi, Heather. How are you doing?
I was waiting for it. The pause was immaculate.
I'm nervous because Heather and I, first of all, Heather and I have known each other for years, and Bob too. We've all known each other for years. And but Heather, I feel like you're like improv family, improv sibling to me because we came up at the same time through Go. And I was thinking coming up on this episode about just how many shows we've done together between our first launch group, The Party, and Legend Has It, and Dycentennial. We've done a lot of shows. And I still had to check and make sure I had the last name pronunciation correct before introducing.
I've known people since high school who still can't pronounce it right.
Yeah.
It's everyone. It is everyone. And when somebody says it correctly, you will know because I will have the biggest smile on my face and just suck it in and be like, yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining to talk with us. I'm excited to have a conversation with you because we're going to be talking about voice and voice as an acting tool and a tool for developing character and voiceover work and all that stuff. I can't wait to jump in. Let's do it. So let's start with, in terms of doing voice work or leading with your voice as a performer, is that something that you've always done since you discovered acting, Heather?
So when I was younger, my first ever job that I actually wanted was to be a cartoon. I know the exact moment it happened, too. I used to watch Ren and Stimpy and be in my nightgown, and my parents would be sitting on the couch, my mom doing school notes and stuff like that, checking papers. My dad would be reading a newspaper or some weird magazine. And at the end of every Ren and Stimpy show, they have that, song like... And I did the Wacky Wild dance, which was just like me flailing about. Mm-hmm. And at the end of one of the episodes, I started dancing, stopped, turned around, looked at my parents. It was so deadpan. And I told my mom and dad, I'm going to be a cartoon. And
they were like, okay, yes, you are.
With that long pause. And my mom just looks up from her papers and looks at me. Yeah, I see it. Just goes back. Like, they both were so not surprised by that response at all.
And how old were you?
Let's see. 5 or 6? But before then, my mom would have me recite commercials to her verbatim.
Oh, my God. That's so funny. My mom did the same thing.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff would you do?
Oh, the M&M's commercials, My Buddy. I would try to impersonate all different characters from like TV and film. Whenever my mom couldn't quote something or remember it, she would turn to me and say, Heather, you know that part of the movie where he's doing this or this or this? And I would say it. And then she'd turn to her friend and carry on the conversation. Like, yeah, that's the part of the movie I like. So she was consistently having me practice my voice on her, and I didn't even realize it. And then my brother is very weird as well. We both do strange voices, but we were practicing fluctuation before we knew what that was. So.
What exactly is that? Yeah.
So fluctuation is where you're using your vocal cords to kind of close up your throat or to open it wider, and it's using the back of your throat and the different like layers of it, as well as working with your jawline to focus on sound coming through your mouth.
Okay.
Wow.
It's very it seems very complicated, but each part of your mouth will give off a different vibration or a different lift. When you smile, different sounds come out, and when you like use the back of your jawline, it sounds more like growly and a little bit more like droopy. So you can, if you look at anybody when they're talking, if you want to resemble their fluctuation of speech, all you have to do is match their mouth and you're halfway there. So with fluctuation, my brother does this. He does it so perfectly too. I can do it pretty loudly, but his is on a whole other scale. You ever breathe in and talk at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So an example of this is where you're talking like this and like sucking in while talking. I'm gonna
isn't that what the Ent voice in Lord of the Rings? No, the trees. Isn't that how the actor doing that is getting that voice?
You know what? I'm not sure. So you can either have a really low baritone voice, and you're automatically kind of pushing your vocal cords, like rubbing against each other a little bit more for that growly sound. Because I can do a lower voice, but that's not the same as like the suck in. Because that one is actually like super tightening on the back of your throat. It is not good for you. There are comfortable and non-comfortable ways of doing voices.
You were about to do it though. Can we hear it?
Yeah. I'm glad you said it. Now I don't feel like a dick.
So my brother has a habit of doing this. I'm telling you, it is so good. I cannot match it. But when I do it, you're going to be like, that's pretty loud. Imagine it like 3 times as loud.
Okay.
So he'll just stand in a doorway and just stare at nothing, and then all of a sudden go into this voice. So.
Okay.
This is killing me. I love it.
Oh my god. Okay. Hold on. I need to drink something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Holy shit! That was breathing in. You were breathing in while you were doing that.
That was nuts.
But his is so freaking loud. It echoes throughout the whole room. I remember when he first started doing it, my dad would be downstairs watching TV and yelling. He's like, "Would you shut up? Like, turn it down." And he also does another one that works on fluctuation, which always... My brother is like the perfect example of like mimicking. And it's not proper mimicking, but it helps you practice your voice. So the other one he likes to do is the opposite and go into what's called a head voice. Like falsetto is more head voice. Like you're imagine like you're focusing it up here to get that high pitch, and you're lifting your soft palate and like just like you're moving up.
Yeah.
So
like those kind of singers sing out at the top of their head, and I think Nicole mentioned that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he does this thing called "You Guys Like Chicken."
Okay. And go on.
I'm an improviser who does enjoy it.
I have a cat here who I know I'm going to scare by doing this. But again, he likes to do where it's just in the middle of no conversation, pure silence. And then he'll be like, "Hey, you guys are chicken!"
That's hilarious. So it sounds like even growing up, you were playing around with voice a lot.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say because I think also when I kind of had a lonely childhood, more so in the fact that I didn't have a lot of friends, and those that I did, I don't know. I didn't get to hang out with a lot of people growing up. That's a whole other story. Sure. But because of that, when you're isolated, you can do one of two things. You can be very, very quiet, or you can consistently talk to yourself. to a point where if you don't create other characters with you, then you seem even more crazier. But you still look just as crazy talking to yourself. And I also had a lot of Barbie dolls, and every single one of them had a different voice.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So, and then at what point, I know you told the story about turning to your parents and saying you wanted to be a cartoon. At what point, like, do you get to start doing this on stage? I guess my question is, like, when you find improv and the ability to develop and perform characters, do you remember, like, the time in your life when you first started getting the opportunity to really do it on stage?
I would say high school probably was where I started to learn. Yeah, in high school, I would say I started to learn how to use character voices, or I would be impersonating somebody and using it to push my character.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I wasn't at a point where I realized, oh, my bad impressions can create new characters. I was still trying to impersonate other people. And
Gotcha.
you see that a lot in newer or fresh-faced performers. I can spot it right away. I was subbing a class a couple months ago, and one of the students, he did Bill Hader. He did a very specific sketch by Bill Hader that not many people know about, and he was almost doing it verbatim as the character's voice. And afterward, I called him out and I said, don't ever do that again. He was like,
Don't
what?
ever come back here.
I was like,
Don't show your face around here again, kid.
Yeah, I just
Sir,
kind of
you
pulled
are
him
no
aside
Bill Hader.
and told him, like, look, I've seen a lot of sketches, and I did the same thing when I first started out. I remember doing a Paris Hilton as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, and I wasn't trying to impersonate her, but I was just repeating the lines that she says over and over again. You don't give something a real personality until you can take them from their main quotes to, can you put them in any situation and still think, oh my God, that's exactly what that person would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost like a Dana Carvey, like his George Bush. George Bush doesn't use those lines, but now it's such in the zeitgeist that, oh yeah, this not prudent is obviously George Bush. No, that's Dana Carvey as George Bush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure you're familiar with the documentary, I Know That Voice. Yeah.
I was literally just about to name drop that. It's my favorite to name drop. I'm like, have you seen I Know That Voice? It's really great. Let me tell you all about it.
Yeah. Well, because I know that they, in that documentary, they talk about, like, I think they have him read a passage from Shakespeare, like All the World's a Stage or Hamlet or something.
I was literally just about to say that exactly.
And but they have each voice actor take a character that they're known for, and then read a passage from Shakespeare in that voice, and that kind of demonstrates that, like, if you really have a character that lives in the voice, then you can read and say anything and still have like a thumbprint to it, which is very cool. A cool way to think about it.
There are characters called legacy voices, which are the people who do Fred Flintstone, Scooby-Doo, Goofy, Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny. Those are legacy voices. They will continue to go on through the ages, but they're not necessarily done by the same person. However, the person who comes next will take from the previous voices. And it's said that if you can do an impression of somebody, that's great. But if you want to get into voice acting, can you do that person reading Shakespeare? Can you do that person at a ticket booth? Can you do them changing the oil in a car? Like, put them in different situations. If you can place them anywhere, you're more likely to get work as doing impression work. Because impression work is very difficult.
Yeah. So well, tell me about it. Like, obviously, I want to at some point make sure we back up and kind of talk about when you first start doing sketch and improv, because that's something that I always recognized about you in the improv world before we really knew each other is your character work. But in general, like, how do you approach original character work and impression work differently? Because you do a lot of both, and like how do you approach them differently?
With impression work, a lot of it I did behind the scenes. I don't think many people realized how many, how many voices I actually do or have been practicing over the years. Because when you're performing and doing improv and sketch, that's not my go-to, is to impersonate somebody else. I want to create a story that will match wherever I'm at, or I want to parallel my partner or whoever else is on stage, and you just go with the flow. You're not pre-planning. But there are certain moments where if it's a Star Wars scene, I will... Oh, that's my cat. Stop scratching on things.
This is the most Heatherist video I've ever seen in my life. I love it.
I think my favorite thing to tell my cats
The most important thing about voice
stop
is,
eating
shut the
things.
fuck up, cat.
Tiggy, come here. Come on, boo-boo.
But you were going to say something about if you're going to do a Star Wars scene, or
Yeah, if we're going to do a Star Wars scene, I am definitely going to do Salacious Crumb if I can, because I think it's funny. I don't know what its business is doing there, but if someone says a line and I feel like that can be a blow line, then I will come in and do that stupid laugh.
I don't think I've ever heard
funny.
you do Salacious Crumb.
No?
No, that's me pimping you right now.
I know. As my
I'm not
cat
sure I
is
know
like-
what Salacious Crumb is.
So you know Jabba the Hutt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the little dude that hangs with him
Yeah.
that just laughs. He's the one that's
He's like
just
the little
sitting there.
Muppet
He's like, here, I'll do it.
Yeah, I know the guy. He looks like a gremlin, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like a little Muppet. He's a Muppet
Yeah.
character that hangs out there.
Do you sometimes start working on? I know that, like, if you're working on an impression, you mentioned earlier, the idea that, like, just aiming at impressions, you can kind of accidentally or naturally find a unique voice out of aiming and missing the mark on an impression.
Mm-hmm.
Does the opposite also happen, where you're trying to, like, develop original voices and you go, that kind of sounds like so and so?
Oh, all the time. So everyone has a register in their voice where they will be able to sound like certain people very easily. With mine, I automatically can do Tara Strong and Kristen Wiig because we have the same vocal range. Our voices sound very similar to each other. If I talk a little higher, or it's just like the intention of my voice, I can sound very similar to them. So all of the characters that Kristen Wiig does, naturally, I should be able to do that. And the same thing with Tara Strong. It's just you have to listen to where they're placing their tongue and their jawline for the certain voices to match them perfectly. And it's the same thing for guys. Like, if you have a naturally low voice and you hear other actors who have naturally low voices, you should be able to sound relatively similar to them, but you just have to practice to kind of get the inflection of how they speak.
Okay. And so, like, if you're working on original character work, do you sometimes accidentally be like, oh, that's a Kristen Wiig character or Tara Strong character?
Yeah.
I apologize. I keep saying I don't like that.
Stop saying Get out of here.
I'm trying. Like, likes, buts are not good.
Believe me, I'm with you. I do that stuff all the time.
And then I said, I want to have, like, a better dialect for myself.
I do. I
Which is so
insert
difficult.
things like sort ofs, kind ofs all the time. I notice myself doing that a lot.
I usually do, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the yeah, you're with me. Yeah, come on, you know.
But so let's maybe we can in terms of original character work, maybe we can go back and talk about that initial improv and sketch experience with you. When did you start doing improv and sketch? Was it college?
Improv. I used to watch Whose Line Is It Anyway, the British version. So the nice thing about living in Michigan, for anybody who is not from Michigan or Detroit area, we get the CBC, which is Canadian Broadcasting Channel. And I used to watch a lot of Canadian television, and Whose Line Is It Anyway used to run a lot on that, or like CW20 UPN. That era.
Yeah, the weird ones.
Yeah. Late at night, you'd watch weird shows about comedy, and you're like, normal people don't do that, but okay, they're playing characters. I do that in my normal life. And just doing weird sketches with friends. And when you're a girl, you play with your Barbie dolls, so you're constantly improvising but not even realizing it. And I used to fake things for attention and lie to shopkeepers and do accents and pretend to be a little British girl and be like, I can't find my mother.
Be in disguise or a chameleon.
Then high school, we had this 1 year we kept switching our hours to try and fit what was a better schedule for students. So one quarter we had a free hour where we could either we could take a class, and there were a whole bunch of classes listed on there, and I saw improv was one of them. And after seeing Whose Line Is It Anyway, I was like, I want to be on SNL. I've been watching this show since I was little, and I'm like, I got this in the bag. I'm like the fucking tits. So I signed up for improv. And it's very much like Whose Line Is It Anyway, but super base 0 or base number 1, like level 1 class at Go Comedy. It basically was that. And the whole time I'm just like, man, I can do better than this. I can actually do, more difficult games than this, but I'll play along with you. Questions, I got a million questions sent.
I ask questions all day. I got no answers.
We had to do one as Shakespeare.
Answers.
We did one as Shakespeare, and there was one guy who was like paralleled with me. There was a line of 9 people on each side, and I went first, and everybody on my side was just like, come on, man, just say a question. We want our turn. I'm just like, go to the other side.
I'm winning improv.
Yeah, it did. It felt like I was winning improv. You win. None of the points matter, but you feel like a winner.
Nope.
And then after that, I went to college, and I enjoyed improv and stuff, but I didn't really understand the fundamentals of how you get into it in Chicago. I knew that Chicago had Second City. I didn't really know much about I.O. I only knew Second City. Yeah, I only knew Second City. And I thought you just had to be so talented to begin with, like do theater and shows, that they would ask you to be a part of Second City.
No, I thought the same thing.
I thought
you had to be at a McDonald's being funny, and then Lauren Michaels come up to you and like, here's your card, kid. Like, what's the process?
I had no idea how it worked. And there was one night in Mertz, which is the dormitory in Zips. Oh my God, it might have been like Zip Zap or something like that. There was a cafe at the bottom of this dormitory, and they had a little mini stage. And one night after stealing a bunch of quesadillas, I had a tendency to do that. I would get Ziploc baggies and just shove them in my purse.
From where? From the restaurant?
From the cafeteria.
Oh, the cafeteria.
Yeah, I would just hoard up on quesadillas and put them in my purse.
Where is there just quesadillas lying around that you didn't order?
Like a quesadilla tree that you're picking them from?
Second floor and first floor had cafeterias. And then there was a downstairs that half of it was part of the theater, and then the other half was like RAs and little offices, and then that cafe area, which had pool tables and the little mini stage for kids to hang out and do shows. So I hear a bunch of ruckus going downstairs, and I walk in, and there's a comedy show going on. And 2 people are on stage, and they're doing funny bits. Just like, oh my God, this is like SNL. They're so funny. They're doing like sketch comedy. And I like rub elbows with some random person. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? What's going on? They're like, oh, it's improv. And I swear to God, I turned to this person and I said, that's not fucking improv. That's not improv. I'm like, Improv is like, whose line is it anyway?
Yeah.
That's not improv.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, they're doing improv. I'm like, no. What? This is
For real?
what? As I'm watching it, this scene is so funny. And I knew it was about Jaws. Oh, irony. Get out.
Oh, wow.
Callback.
Yeah. Chris and Molly were doing a scene about Jaws in the distance. And I remember, right then and there, I wanted to be a part of that group. I realized, oh, you're just lying on stage? You're doing scenes? I can do this. I've been doing this for years and not even realizing it. So, afterward, I I kind of got really creepy with the guy who was running it.
Okay.
Jeff Bernards was like the team captain at the time, and he walks off stage and I just like run right up to him, and I think I grabbed his arm like, so close to his face. It was just like, how do I join you? How do I do this?
Make me one of you.
I know. I'm like,
This is improv. I want in.
This is improv? You guys are doing improv? How do I do
gladly
auditions?
pay you
Like,
a
when are
bag
you
full
doing
of quesadillas. Here you go.
And I think he was so freaked out because he's just like backed away. He's like, yeah, we got auditions like next week if you want to set up. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, okay. Cool, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Back away slowly. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to email you. Okay, I'll see you guys then. I'm going to email you. Going up to my dormitory, eating tortillas, and just be like, yeah, I'm going to do improv. Yeah.
And so you end up joining that team after the audition?
Yeah, I joined that.
Okay.
I auditioned, I got on, and about a month or two later, guess who else joined that team?
Who's that?
Tom Novak.
I know the answer. Yeah.
Who?
Tom Novak.
Tom Novak.
Oh, Tom Novak, of course. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we started.
But describe Tom Novak the way... Because I love when you tell the story. I love this story.
For the people who know Tom Novak now, he's just cherubed face. He's constantly in sweaters. He looks like a dad, but is not a dad. He just looks very like, I'm comfortable. I'm at home with myself. I just want to sit down, eat a pizza, and read a good book. Like, just very... He's dressed kind of like how Bob dresses right now. Just like very comfy. Like, ready to relax.
Yeah.
Tom in college. Now, take the biggest Guido-looking guy you can possibly imagine. Fake tan. He looked like he was wearing bronzer, but it was just like natural dew from being outside all day.
Okay.
Frosted tips. And always wearing like
frosted tips.
Oh yeah, like his.
Hey, I had frosted tips at some point, but still, I love picturing Tom that way.
His hair was all spiky and gelled, and he looked like
Jersey Shore Tom.
like chapstick, like always like glossy lips from chapstick.
Wow.
And he wore like Express T-shirts, like the gold, like the lame of metal design, or always a pastel like popped color polo. Just super douche. Oh, he looked like the biggest douchebag. But the moment that you would talk to him, you would realize, oh, this guy doesn't suck. He's actually really nice.
Yeah.
Surrounded by women, and always surrounded by women. Always surrounded by women. I'm talking like 15 girls surrounding him. He just was like the life of the party. Everybody knew who he was. Whenever we had shows, he would bring like 20 people, the rest of us maybe one. Just, yeah, super cool.
Oh. Okay, so you joined the team though, and with Tom, and
he's the one who told me to start classes at IO. So
cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
We were on the CTA, and I asked him, I'm like, how do you get into IO? Like, what do you do? He's like, oh, you pay. I was like, that's it?
Yeah.
That's
Again,
it?
no one has to invite you into the class.
I was like, wait a
You just
minute.
register.
Wait a minute. I didn't have to.
Well, I could just
like,
see Tom saying that like
2 years. Like 2 years
you
go
have to
by,
pay?
and he tells me this, and I was like, what? Wait, 2 years, and this is how you get into this shit? I would have done this when I first started going.
You're just
to
waiting
Chicago.
for the tap on the shoulder.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I paid for classes and started doing improv. I sucked really bad. I was terrible. I was terrible for a really long time.
In what way? Like what were some of your challenges starting out that you were having that like made it tough for you?
Thinking I was the shit when I wasn't.
Okay.
But
how did that like what is that? Super big choices, bulldozing, or like how does that manifest itself?
My first class, I did not talk until the very last week. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The first level 1, I was very, very shy, and I didn't understand what improv really was. Like everything that you learn, I learned backwards because I had in the group at Loyola, we were doing long form, and then to jump back to level 1 is kind of weird.
Jolting, yeah.
Yeah, it's jolting. And at IO specifically, they want you to play more close to yourself or like layers of characters. Mm-hmm. And I learned backwards. I started with characters first, and to play myself, I never did that. I never liked playing myself. So for class we did, was it cocktail party where there's like 3 groups of 3 and then you steal focus?
Yes.
And my teacher said, just play yourself. And I thought, like, literally play myself? Because a guy in my group was playing a character and I was so confused. And at one point he's just like, are you dating anybody? I'm like, no, I'm celibate. And I was at the time.
Oh, you thought play not like act the same way that you do, but you thought like act yourself as in everything about you is true.
Yeah, literally be yourself.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So people after that first game asked me, they're like, is that true? Are you celibate? I was like, yeah, wasn't I supposed to be myself? And everyone just started laughing, and from then on I didn't speak. I didn't speak until the very last class.
No.
Yeah, I got real in my head and shy, and as classes continue to move forward, I have a very bad habit of doing well in class, but for actual shows, doing terribly. Because I want so badly to make the audience laugh that I do forget about the other people on stage, or if I see something going wrong, I think I can fix it instead of letting it breathe. There are many facets to it, and it's all very much up in my head for class shows. And it's the class shows where I don't give a fuck that I do the best.
And when you're not giving a fuck, you mean that you're forgetting less about, or you're forgetting about making the audience laugh, not worrying about that so much? Or like, then what's the difference? How does it change?
So when I was at Go, it was the same thing. It got to a point where I thought about quitting. And you remember that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was taking a break from improv because I didn't feel like I was getting things. And it's also strange when you come from an acting background or a theater background and you're essentially doing theater, but you can't make it work. Like everything that I was taught or that I thought I knew how to do, it just wasn't clicking. And it didn't actually click until I realized I'm not having fun. I keep playing these games with myself where if I don't do good, I feel like shit. Where I need to focus more so on just what's there. Just focus on the first small thing that's given to you and then build off from that. And then you get more comfortable on stage, and that's where the characters that you create, you can kind of develop a world for them, or you can, like, I have a Rolodex of characters that I like to do. And I automatically know what they would respond to different outcomes because I've practiced them so much either in my head or on stage that I feel more comfortable being them in a scene. And that way I don't have to focus on, okay, you got to be funny, you got to do this. No, just react naturally as that person. But yeah, it's hard to explain. Like, you just know when you know. Like, you know when it's just, this isn't right. I'm not feeling like myself. I don't feel comfortable. And for some people, they never feel that way. They're always doing good. There's other people who will never be able to feel comfortable on stage. It just won't click. It's minute, but there are a couple people where you see them, you're like, I saw you 5 years ago and you sucked then. You still suck. You're not paying attention. You're
Get out of my class.
Yeah. Right.
Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. Like, I can't teach you.
Take your Bill Hader sketch and get out of here.
Get out.
But I hear you.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm curious about that because I do remember that pocket of time when you were going through that in your improv experience, and so I'm curious, like, in terms of when was it that when that switch flipped for you, feeling more comfortable on a consistent basis? Do you remember, like, what it was, or like
was there an event or anything, or a series of events?
I'm trying to think if there was like one specific moment where I felt just like really on fire. I think there are moments in showdowns that we've done at Go Comedy where I felt really, really good. Like you can tell when it's your night. Like if you're hitting everything and you just feel like I got this, I'm on fire, like nothing bad can go wrong. But then the second show you do that night, you may not be as good. Yeah. It's give and take.
That's so frustrating when you waste your good one on the 8 o'clock. I mean, like, oh man, I was too bright.
Yeah. I think also, so a very bad habit to have is consistently, I guess, pride. And thinking that you are better than everybody else, or having someone tell you, you're better than that. Like, you can do better than that. And you want to live up to that expectation. My family is very much sport orientated. Like, if you aren't good at sports, and if you're not the best in that sport, you really have you've got nothing to offer. So I've been very competitive since a child, and it crossed over into improv, which is a bad thing, because if you're super competitive, you constantly want to be on stage, or you want to show other people and be like, that person sucked, I can do better than them. But you're supposed to be uplifting that person so you both look good. And it's certain aspects of like those deadly sins where if you can't identify it, it's to your detriment. And I think I started to identify it too much, where I was trying to play so hard against that I lost myself. And you do need to have some kind of competitive edge. Sure. And if you
there's got to be a balance.
Yeah, there's got to be a balance between things. But for everyone, it's very different on how you learn and how you process things. And for me, I'm very visual, and there are certain, and it's the same thing with teachers. There are certain teachers who are going to know how to mold you the way that you need to be molded. And then there are other teachers who, it's like they're speaking another language, and it feels like daggers every time they mention your name, because they don't like what you did, and they don't know how to fix it. I've had teachers multiple times at Second City specifically that we didn't mesh. It's you know that thing about colors, people's personalities.
Oh, true colors.
Yeah, certain colors will match with others, and then some. You can't win. No matter what you do, you're never going to get along with that person. You can have niceties and be acquaintances, but you'll never have like a full-on relationship with that person. And that's how it is with teachers, with performers, and you have to see yourself at. Actually, the stage itself has a personality. If that audience is super duper hot, you have a better chance of making them laugh. If they are super cold, then that rubs off on you, and you may not feel as confident going into stuff. Yeah.
So, and it sounds like you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, and eventually you let that ease up, or does that sound right?
Yeah. And also, I deal with, I guess, depression would have added to it as well. So there's other underlying factors, but it just gets to a point where if you're not doing it for fun, if you're not having a good time, then what's the point? And that's where I was. I was at that point. And by taking a break and actually dissecting what I found fun and the joy of it, that's what I try to bring back. So for me, a lot of my critiques were, you need to play more to yourself. And I for the longest time, I never knew how to do that. And I feel like I play closer to myself now in shows because I myself am a character. I don't have to be that super straight-laced of what I think a straight man is.
Totally. I haven't seen you play in forever because we, went separate ways. You went to Chicago, I went to New York. I feel like I'm curious. I'm so curious because, like I said, when I started seeing you perform, I love your character work and your stage presence, and it never personally bothered me that you didn't really play a lot of straight character because I'm like, that's what I want is to see your powerhouse characters. But I'm just kind of curious, like, I don't know, like, so you're working the close to self characters more into your improv these days than you used to, and that opens up a whole new playground for you.
Yeah, it's not even specifically like true to self. It's more so I'm playing more honest emotion. Like you can play a character that is very similar to you in the fact that I would probably respond the same way. Even if I'm playing a dog that happens to like miss its owner when it's gone, that's relatable because I probably would miss someone if they're gone. Like I think when people tell you play more to yourself, we take it so literally, and it's more so play how you would react to that if it were you, or what would you do in that situation, and then add the character with it. Like you're making a stew. You're not just making broth.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard for people to take that idea of playing close to self and not and have it lead to just kind of being lukewarm. Sometimes people are just like, well, this is, you know what I mean? It's like the energy goes away, and you can still have energy as a close to self character, just like, dial up your emotion and just make it feel real. But,
Well, I think some
tough.
students have a hard time doing that. I don't know, because they don't really imagine themselves in that situation. But it's this kind of student, like in the middle of a robbery scene, it doesn't feel like they have a pulse at all. Because and you talk to them after, like, is that really how you would act in a robbery? And they're like, yeah, sure, yeah. So you wouldn't be scared. There are people that you don't know in mask around you with a loaded weapon. That doesn't. No, I just give them my wallet and. Fridays. I don't feel that's honest,
I wish the best
and
for
trying
you.
to bring that out of them is, can be tough. Do either of you have, like, I don't know, any exercises or tricks to get that out of them, or even out of yourself? Because sometimes if the scene is such a, I don't know, off the wall scene, you might find an emotion or an attaching emotion a little difficult, to summon. I don't know.
What kind of exercise do you use, Heather?
So I have 2 games that I love to play. And the first one, anytime I sub a class or teach a class, I make sure it's class number 1, is halfway through. Yeah, if students are performing for an hour, I can pick up exactly who they are. I know the exact characters that they like to play. I know what their comfort zone is, because it's just very evident. They're brand new. They're fresh. They're gonna cling, like really, really cling to what feels the most comfortable, and it's so easy to spot. Like you can tell who will never do zany characters or voices, or who's just always doing that. So halfway through the class, I like to play a game called The Worst, and I ask them to do the worst scene. I have 2 people go up, and I tell them, be as bad as possible. I'm talking the shittiest improv you can possibly imagine. I want to be upset. by the time that you get off. That like, you've got like 2-ish minutes to make me hate what you're doing. And they try so hard, and I'll even give them tips too. And I'm like, I always call them out halfway through. It's like, hey, Bob. And I'm like, you just called him a name. You failed. You already created a relationship. Yep. He's got a name. Yeah. And they're like, what? I don't know you. You're a stranger. And I'm like, you called him a stranger. You just set up a premise. You failed. And they're like, well, I'm not going to talk then. I'm like, so you're a mute. I saw you look his way. You're interested. You failed. And there's just so many ways for them to fail, because whatever you do, even if it's just trying, it's good. There's only one way that you can actually fail and create a bad scene. So I have them all go, and then at the very end, I'll go up and get a suggestion, be like, can I get a suggestion of anything whatsoever? And so like, pineapple. I'm like, thank you, pineapple. I walk out the door, and I walk out of the building, and I wait a minute. And then I walk back in. I'm like, the only way you can fail is if you leave the theater. Not even leaving the entryway to go into the bar, because you're still there. You're still somewhat committed. It's when you get out of the building, you get in your car, you drive home, and you bail on everything, and you never return. That's how you fail.
Yeah.
There's no, like you can.
I know. I still would find that entertaining. I would just like, hey, everybody, with afraid knots. Can I get a suggestion? All right, everybody.
Do it in New York, James. Do it in New York. They'd be like, this is art.
Here's a gift for you.
This is a different improv. Who is that man who walked away? He was so serious, so committed.
Yeah. I think that is such a great message, though. Is that anything you do can add to a scene in a way that can be built and used for success in the scene. That is very cool. I also, because we're kind of coming to close to the end of our time, which I'm bummed about, because I could talk to you forever. But I want to hear about Heather Does Voices, your social media voice project of impressions. And is it original character work as well, or is it mostly impressions?
I do original characters as well. I started with impressions just because it's Heather Does Voices. I figure any type of voice, it's practice for me. At the same time, I want to showcase all the voices you can do. So as I said, I do impressions. I like listening to different people's voice inflections and how they use their voice, and also watching them. So it's me trying to replicate that. It's not always on point. Some voices you can't hit exactly, but I'll try to get the emphasis of it. And the same thing for, I'm trying to dress up during quarantine with what I have to kind of look like these people. I've worn the same blonde wig for so many people that it's like, I turned it around at one point. I'm like, it looks somewhat different. And then do original characters. And I'm starting to get more into singing and doing like sketch songs, like with the Go album. And I'm also working on a pilot animation. I just got done scouting my voices for the first video. Yeah, RJ is going to be one.
Oh, awesome.
And then, nice. He's going to play my brother, Devin.
That's great.
I was like, I need kind of a douchey sounding, just a young teenage boy.
You know how to pitch a project.
Well, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, RG's played that character really well in the past, and I just like that it's such a low voice for a teenage boy, but at the same time, it sounds like it would be a teenage boy, because he can get like a nice,
he can make
whiny,
it that way,
he's got a little bounce in his voice, but it comes low,
So that works out good. And then my friend Matt is doing a Czech student, and I loved his read. It was so good. And then I'm doing I'm doing majority of the voices actually.
Cool.
And I'm gonna be pitching to a couple of other people. I'm hoping Matt Noss will play my dad.
Awesome. Yeah.
Come on, his voice is perfection for like everything. But to have like an angry dad, I can't think of anybody else.
Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt does angry. It's almost like in a different way. It kind of reminds me of Will Ferrell's ability to do that, like yelling.
That's a
dad.
really good
but
comparison.
it's it's Matt Naz's like own energy of that.
Brian Lark does a really great angry voice as well. Like realistic angry voices that you could see in people. I feel like Matt and Brian do a great job. Mm-hmm. But if you were to take it on the other spectrum of it's so unbelievable that it's believable is Garrett Fuller. Him being angry, I could watch and listen to for hours. Because he always goes like high inflection on stuff. He's like, what is that? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And then the way
strained.
The arch, like.
Yeah, he's just like, what is that?
What is,
Well, I'm so glad to hear that you're working on an animation or voiceover driven project. You said it is meant to be animated as a pilot.
Yeah, I'm doing all of the work for it, so that's what gets into it like taking forever to get out.
Totally,
I've got those two guys did voices for me. I'll probably have to do a couple of retakes, and then I have to record my parts. And even though I'm just doing the opening, what is it called, the cold open for the pilot, it's still a lot of work, and I have to hand draw all of the storyboard pieces. So I'm not doing the full animation, a storyboard, but like sometimes the mouth will move up or down. And it's just
gotcha.
A lot of work.
Tedious. Yeah.
Yes.
It sounds awesome. Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, though, people can see you on Heather Does Voices on Instagram and Facebook. You're doing it on TikTok as well?
I'm on TikTok, YouTube. I am under my actual name, Heather Sejnow. I need to update it. I don't know how.
What is going on? We are millennials. We're getting out of touch with the new technology.
I edit video and like do social media for work, and I don't even know how to do this.
Yeah.
I gotta Google it. But eventually it'll be Heather Does Voices on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
Cool. Yeah. And I mean, I loved everything that I've seen from those channels. And especially, I just want to give a shout out to the Catherine O'Hara character from Schitt's Creek, just because Julia has been watching that show a lot, or was like whenever it was that you posted that. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, holy shit, that is spot on.
Oh, James,
it got me.
Do we really appreciate that?
Yes.
Thank you so kindly.
Yeah, because she just has this weird, like every time I hear her, I'll say to Julia, I'll be like, she just has the most like almost sporadic way of, talking.
She took it from a book. There is a very specific book that she grabbed a lot of her terminology from, and she didn't give it to the writers until the second or third season for them to read and be able to write for her. Because she was ad-libbing all of those strange lines. But one thing I wanted to add is that to get into character or do specific voices, a lot of voice actors will do tells or triggers. And for that specific, the Moira Rose one, it's very much like, I don't know what it is, but if I like turn my head and kind of like lean in and do like these motions, I automatically get the sound to kind of come out.
Oh, yeah.
It's very bizarre. And the same thing for like Liza Minnelli. I have to do a smile and like think choppy, lispy.
Okay.
And like they're weird. It's psychological and then it's also physical.
I just love all the terms, choppy, lispy.
Because
I love it.
She's got showed up that choppy lips to it.
Yeah. Yes.
And like,
come on, Apple, we're going out.
Yeah, you do the same thing for Drew Barrymore, where you're kind of your eyebrows are furrowed and your lip goes to the side. It's weird things that help you get into it. What's his name from Rocco's Modern Life? Who plays Rocco? He's in I Know That Voice, and his tell is he just goes like that's how he gets into character.
Yeah, cool. I love those little physical tics that help. And I also, I mean, just the tip that you gave of trying to start with the mouth and jaw first is really great. So I guess I'll just say, like, I'm a fan of what you're doing, and I'm glad that you're doing well, and we really appreciate you talking with us about all this stuff.
So much.
Thanks for hanging.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Half me on again. We'll do version 2.
Yeah. We'll do part 2, the sequel. Yeah. All right, Heather. Thank you so much. It's been a blast to talk to you, and we will catch you next time on Improv FAQ at length.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.